I'll be blunt, it's not what I was hoping for, but the DA's offer is still pretty reasonable.
What's reasonable?
My name's Ashton Moio. I'm an actor. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I do the Meisner technique, and I studied at Playhouse West for 9 years. I do stunts, so I started out as a stuntman, and I wanted to take an acting class to, be prepared if I ever had to say a line and fall downstairs or whatever. And my dad knew a producer who also managed writers, and she knew a casting director who recommended Playhouse West. And when I'd first gone there, I'd probably read 3 books in my entire life, and I was not too interested in any of it really, and then kind of fell in love with acting there. And also, the thing I loved about acting the most was the discipline with which the good actors approach their craft. It's very much like a professional athlete, or even in stunts.
Take my word for it, you're acting a little bit nuts.
Oh, and I'm supposed to trust your judgment on mental stability. I'm supposed to trust your evaluation on the nuances of my sanity. You can't even tell the difference between a fucking French and Chinese restaurant.
I like them both.
But they're different. They're totally fucking different.
Not in my inner emotional subjective experience of them, they're not.
The decor, the accents, the fucking accents, the little phrases the waiters say to each other. Oh, they yell at each other in these whole totally different languages. Does none of this make an impression on you?
It impresses me that I like them both.
It would, wouldn't it? Your total inner emotional subjective experience must be this epic fucking fog. I mean, what does the world do? What do you want, some sort of dualistic trip where everything is in twos and you just can't tell which is which, and you're pulled between them on this fucking tightrope between people who might like to have some sort of definitive reaction in order to know?
You!
What? What's wrong with that?
2 guys, Eddie. I happen to mention 2 fucking guys!
I just want to know if it's a pattern, Chinese restaurants, and you can't tell the difference between people.
As I started learning about it, I was like, wow, it takes an insane amount of discipline. And I also love that it's something that you can get better at for the rest of your life. Whereas, in sports or martial arts or fighting, you kind of peak out maybe in your mid or late 20s, but acting, you can do your best work on your deathbed. So that was very attractive to me, which is why I also like golf a lot. I feel like it's a muscle, and it's like training your imagination to where you can be affected by things more easily, to where your imagination can be more alive. Some of the things I do that I think are really great is reading a lot of plays. I think if you're an actor, you should be reading 4 plays a week, and books all the time, autobiographies, history, philosophy. Because what acting really is as well is comprehending and communicating ideas.
What are we supposed to say? Because I never hesitate to put an N-word on his back. I'm sorry, that's bullshit, dude.
Yes.
What about the artist's intent?
Dude, that is exactly what I'm talking about, man.
Dude, I saw your bitch Lily on YouTube.
Oh, okay, well,
yeah.
Lily is not my bitch anymore, so.
Hey, then can I get at her, dude? Because I got to find out what she was on.
Nigga, I don't give a fuck.
So I think reading's a huge thing to do. And reading fiction's great to exercise your imagination. Autobiographies are great because you could learn about what other actors did and how hard they worked. And I find that, the people that really get somewhere are the people that worked hard for a long time. Typically, the most talented people end up being drug addicts or something, or not, not always, but it's typically the people that are slightly less talented that work a lot harder. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I feel like so. It's just about staying consistent and moving forward, and eventually it all kind of clicks. I think I read a lot of plays, which is hugely important too, because it allows you to look at a scene and break down what the scene is actually about. The setting changes, the place changes, but human relationships are human relationships, and I feel like there's only so much there. So if you read enough plays, you can start to look at a scene. For example, if you have a scene where you're firing somebody, you could look at that scene or look at a breakup scene and be like, oh, it's ending a relationship, and you can kind of distill it down to whatever kind of simple human thing it is. And you only can do that by reading so many plays. And you can start to recognize those things. typically I guess I'll read like 3 plays a week, but you know, sometimes I've done stuff where I'll try to read like a play a day for 30 days, which is also important too, because like I've been in class for a long time, so just to find new material to work on all the time. I think a great thing to do is to find an actor you really like and then go watch their films from the very beginning all the way to like the end of their life. And then through doing that, you can then find other actors you like, go watch all their films, who directed it, and what other movies did he direct. So it kind of spiders out, but it ends up being a course study that's very personal to you. I love Al Pacino, just because of his like tenacity and how much fun he has acting. I watch every Pacino movie. I love Marlon Brando. He can pretty much play like any part and make it extremely like personal, where it seems like it's him, but he can play like total opposite characters. His range and depth is unbelievable. I love Robert Duvall, John Cassavetes, Peter Falk, Ben Gazzara, Gina Rollins, Diane Keaton. I guess are some of my favorites. Jack Nicholson, I really enjoy his work. Michael Parks is an actor like not a lot of people know about, but I feel like it's hugely underrated. Jon Voight, Paul Newman I like a lot. Yeah, you see, I think it's good for every actor. You know, start out with the main ones, you know, or the ones that are really good representations of like this kind of work, which is, I guess, you know, stuff that they studied in derivatives of the Stanislavski system, and then find people you really like, read about how they did it, what they did. That's always something I felt to be really helpful. If you see someone who's where you want to be, study them. You know, find out like what they did, and then do the same thing. And typically, you know, it'll kind of get you similar results, I feel like.
But you don't do stuff. You never think about that about me. These records are important to me, and you never ask me what's on the flip side.
Because I don't give a shit.
You don't give a shit. I
don't
do.
give a shit.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Nobody
I do give
cares.
a shit. To me,
No.
it's important. Every one of those records relates to a certain time in my life. It's meaningful to me. Who produced it? Who did the art? What year it was made? Who was bouncing off of whose styles and who was expanding on that? To me, it's important. I mean, the first time I met you, at Model Sisters High School party, 1955. I know what song was playing when I walked in the room the first time I saw you. It was What a Shame. Man, that's
good. Good, Ashton.
I've been here at the Paris Meisner studio for the last month, working with Mark and Tracy. That their focus is so much on like the doing and like making scenes clear, and I think that it makes for acting that's very like interesting to watch. And yeah, I've been very inspired being here. I've been doing a ton of scenes, and I've really enjoyed it. And Tracy and Mark are like my 2 favorite teachers from Playhouse West. Them and Mr. Carnegie or Robert Carnegie are, I think, as good as it gets. And I checked out a lot of bad acting classes. So, but yeah, I've been having a great time here. To go just really back with, I guess, like Playhouse West, but to go back a little further, there was a theater in Russia called the Moscow Art Theater that developed, Stanislavski had to develop a technique to deal with realism in the theater that was brought in by Chekhov, Ibsen, and Strindberg, which was inspired by realism in literature that was kind of started by like Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. So for actors to be able to act like situations that dealt with like psychology, you know, and things going on inside. So instead of a king being good and this guy being bad, and people could be like, oh, I'm bad, or like I'm good. Now you had like people that were good and bad, and so because of that, there had to be a different approach to acting. So Stanislavski developed this system, and then the Moscow Art Theater was touring New York. Harold Clurman and Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, Cheryl Crawford, Sanford Meisner, saw the work. They were blown away. So they started their own theater, the Group Theater, and they did the plays of Clifford Odets. And basically every big actor that you've heard of or know of, I mean, from like Marlon Brando, James Dean, Robert De Niro, Meryl Streep, I mean, it goes on and on, like pretty much everyone studied with somebody who was either in the Group Theater or taught by somebody in the Group Theater. And they all took like the Stanislavski method, but with a different area of focus, where Stella Adler's area of focus was maybe more like on characters and like script analysis, and Lee Strasberg's was more about like emotion and personal experiences, and then Meisner was more about working off the other person so that real things could happen to you in the moment. So he taught at the neighborhood playhouse in New York for years. As he got older, the winters were too hard on his old bones. And he had all these crazy things happen to him. He got hit by a truck when he was like in his 80s and stuff. But after years of like distilling his technique and evolving it and coming up with new stuff, he came to California. For the last 8 years of his life, he taught at Playhouse West, which was at first supposed to be like a West Coast division of the neighborhood playhouse in New York. So he taught there, and that was where he had like the latest developments like in his work. He taught up until 2 weeks before he died, and they do the Meisner technique there. But instead of doing the 2-year program like they do at the neighborhood playhouse, they kind of base it on the model of the group theater, which the idea that Harold Clurman had was that if you have like a group of people that are like-minded and are working together for a long time, then that's when like real growth will happen. In the same way, like everything exploded out of the group theater, you know, all these great playwrights and plays and actors. Playhouse West kind of had like a similar goal. Now it's a little bit more of an acting school, but yeah, I've been going there for 9 years, and it's just a place to do scenes, and it takes time to be able to work. And then another thing too is, you know, when I first started, I wasn't even interested in really like getting out there and working until I felt like I had a sound knowledge of like the craft of it, because doors open, but they don't open all the time. So if you go and you get this great agent, you go around and you go to all these auditions and you suck, then you know 3 years from now you could be a completely different actor, but they'll be like, oh yeah, I saw that guy, he was fucking awful, you know. So yeah, I think it's important to really learn how to act. Yeah, and just develop good, healthy habits, which I think studying the Meisner technique and working at the Paris Meisner studio will give you. Because if you get to where you have a sound technique, then you could go anywhere with that, under any conditions, and continue to grow. So just about not having bad habits. The whole point too of like all these like techniques is to make acting something like piano, where there's like you learn the scales and you do the finger exercises and you learn how to read music, and it's trying to turn acting into an art you could learn that way. Now, like, you can't teach the like expression part of it, you know, that kind of comes from your soul or comes from that thing that's uniquely you, but they can teach you, you know, like with piano, like the dexterity and the ability to read music so that you can express yourself through that instrument. And I feel like the Meisner technique and what you guys are doing here is to do the same thing. It's allowing you to get in touch with yourself so that you can express yourself through your instrument, and use your life in a way to, you know, fuel your work.